Do you remember last week when I said, "Surprise sequel, mother trucker"? I bet you're expecting me to say, "Surprise trilogy, mother trucker"! Because we're taking a look at the third Amsterdam ink today. Roll that intro. What's up YouTube, I'm J.Rod of BATTLEBRAWLERproductions, and just like that intro skit suggested, we are taking a look at our third Amsterdam ink, this time of Amsterdam's Acrylic Ink Neutral Gray 710. I am very excited for this because I have never used a gray ink before. I absolutely loved their black ink, I thought it was phenomenal, and I actually was surprised by their white ink, though thought it was not the best white ink to use, so I'm really curious to see where this gray is going to fit. Now of course this is by Amsterdam, as you saw. It has the normal Amsterdam ink qualities that we have come to know and expect with their inkwells. Name of the company at top, acrylic ink on the side, number that I have no idea what it means, name in multiple languages, 4 little illustrations on the side of what you can use it for, little text saying to shake well, high pigment, waterproof, and do not store in cold environment, and this of course sells for $6.99 for 1 fluid ounce, which I think is a pretty good deal. Though I have seen on Amazon for much higher at $11.99, which I think is a bit of a ripoff. So let's stop jumping around the bush, let's go ahead and test this in our sketchbook. Now since the ink decided to spill all over the paper, I thought I would do my brush test first, but I forgot to hit record. So I will say this, the ink itself is really smooth. I am noticing that it's not pouring into the inkwell as easily as the other inks did, but I'm not sure if that's because I didn't shake it up as well. I'm pretty sure I did. Or is it because of the specific pigment that they used to give it this really nice gray color? This neutral gray is really nice. I really do like it. I've never used a gray ink before, as many providers of ink don't actually sell it because you can just water down normal black ink to get, of course, your ink washes and your grays. But here I like this solid gray. You can water this down to get a lighter shade of gray, but I think using this is going to be really interesting. Now it is a really strong pigment. As you can see, it actually bled through the bottom page. It didn't bleed through the other one there, but you could definitely see it's pretty strong, and I really like this shade of gray. I feel like there's a lot we can do with this, so I'm very excited to give it a quick test. Now let's go ahead and do our nib test here. I know I like to start with that, but you know, I think it'll be the same as the other ones where, yep, very smooth, very nice. It's going to get a little bit of edging and bleeding, but that's because of the paper we're using. It's not the best paper for this, but yeah, we're getting some good solid lines. I actually think it's hugging the nib a lot better than the other ones we used before, so that's really nice. Go ahead and do our quill nib test real quick. Very nice. Of course, same quality. Very smooth, very nice to use. Now, what is the illustration that we'll be doing today? Well, it's something a little special that I think you guys will like. Today's illustration is of Wrath, which makes sense as we did illustrate him for both the black ink and the white ink. However, I won't exclusively just be using the gray ink. I want to use all of my Amsterdam inks, all 3 of them. And this piece was specifically designed to actually take advantage of this. I'm going to start with white on this side, have gray as my transition in the middle, and then end with a predominantly black theme on this side. I want to see how far I can push these tones. I plan on using the white ink to fix any mistakes, the gray ink to do all my line art, and to fill in my 100% blacks with black. I want to see how far I can push these tones unaltered, which is why I won't be doing any ink washes. I think this is going to be a really fun and interesting challenge, and it's probably going to be something very unique that I don't think we've seen before on the channel, maybe even on YouTube as far as I know. So let's go ahead and roll that super time lapse. I knew going into this piece that it was going to be difficult. That was no shocker to me. Usually when I ink with multiple different inks, it tends to be longer and more difficult, and this was no exception. I did still enjoy it. I think that this gray ink is really fun to use and very interesting. And I'm also happy that I made the decision to actually do all of my line art with the gray ink. It helps make this piece stand out among all the other pieces I did, and actually helps to add depth to it that I normally wouldn't have. It can even be used as a pseudo halo effect in a weird way. Normally when I ink, my methodology is to identify my areas of black and my areas of white. I want to have that 100% white and black in all my pieces so that I'm able to create this eye-popping duotone. And then I'll go with a gray through different methods. Traditionally, my favorites tend to be ink washes, especially with Wrath, as he's meant to have a liquid suit. But with this gray ink, I didn't have to create an artificial gray. I had a real gray to work with, and I think that's amazing. Especially for Wrath, again, who has that liquid armor design, it works really well for him. Doing the line art added that depth like I mentioned, but choosing all the areas of red on Wrath's costume to be the gray ink helped with that, and just created this 3-tone that I absolutely love. This piece ended up being far more graphic in nature than I normally do, which worked well as I did study graphic design for 2.5 years before switching to animation and illustration, so that was really fun. Now that doesn't make this ink perfect and easy to use. There was definitely a learning curve, mainly with a brush. While yes, it is smooth and it hugs the brush tight, meaning I didn't have to load my brush every 5 seconds, the design of the piece itself led to more intricate designs for the actual ink to be applied to, and that created a few problems as the ink was spread very thin at times, meaning that I would have to go over it. Now, that's pretty standard, and I don't mind going over a piece once or twice, but we're talking 3 3 to 5 times, sometimes even 6 to 7 times to make sure the area was flush. And to me, that's annoying, but this is a gray ink. It's not going to have as strong as a pigment as a black ink, so that's understandable, and I was willing to work through it. And I'm happy I did, as creating that even and consistent tone was really fun and added just a little bit of extraness to the piece that, again, I wouldn't be able to do if I was to create an artificial gray. This ink offers something that I really had never experienced before, and I'm really happy that I used this ink for this piece. If I was to redo it, I would not be using artificial gray techniques. I would just use this ink again because it was that fun to use. Not perfect, but very fun to use. But now that I've gone over how I actually created the piece, let's go ahead and take a look at it in its finished glory. And we're done. And guys, I absolutely love how this piece came out. I mean, I really love how this piece came out. I know I normally say this is in my top 10 favorite pieces of the year, and that's because I love the art we make on the channel. I feel like every time I do something, I try to push and improve, and I feel like for the most part, I meet that benchmark. But here, I knocked it out of the park on this one. I'm patting myself on the back. This is easily top 5 favorite pieces of the year. I love how I had this specific vision in mind and how I really did bring it to life. I have white, gray, and black, and I love how the 3 tones not only transition, but mesh. I love how they work together. I love the attention to detail. Like, for example, I love how these bat wings are more bat-like than how I've done before. I've really tried to pay attention to this detail. I also love how Wrath, unlike Spider-Man, he can't stick to walls. So he actually has to punch the wall and grab into it with his fingers, and you can see the weight of that actually is cracking the walls behind him where his feet are. So I love that attention to detail. I really did try to think this piece out. I love the pose. It looks super good. I love how the sword came out. I really tried to make it more liquidy. And overall, this is just a piece that I feel like I really did push my craft to a whole new level doing. And if you guys like this, it is available on my ArtStitch account for a $1 digital download. It's that first link in the description down below, and it really does help the channel out. Not only do you help support us, but you also get an awesome desktop background. But putting the piece to the side, let's talk about the ink itself, and I actually have a lot to say about this ink. While this is the third Amsterdam ink we've taken a look at on the channel, it is the first ever gray ink we've ever looked at. In fact, I actually have not even found another gray ink, so I think that's a really unique distinction that this company has. Now, you could view that simple fact and chop this ink up to being a gimmick, and I don't think that's right at all. I do not think this ink is a gimmick. I also don't think you should view this ink as a painting ink. It's not. It simply is an ink that's gray and gives it a unique edge that other inks don't have and can add something interesting to your artwork that most inkers don't use or take advantage of. Here's what it is. And that is creating a new area of gray in your piece that you normally would not be able to do. In inking, we have a few different ways to create an artificial gray. Usually it's done by cross-hatching, hatching, stenciling, or my 2 personal favorite methods, ink washes and splatter effects. But here is a true gray. This isn't an artificial gray we are forcing. This is a real gray that you can actually put into your artwork. And there are very few inkers that I know of that actually do that. This is very interesting. And the fact that if you were to make your own gray ink, you'd have to get a separate bottle and then mix and match the ratio, and you have to worry about color matching. But here is one that's already done, and it can add that little bit of extra pop to your art as you have a true gray. It creates this really cool effect. Now for me, I think this is really useful because my character Wrath doesn't have any cross-hatching on him at all. And that's a specific choice as he's meant to have a liquid armor suit. And for me, when I illustrate Wrath, I find that those cross hatches and hatching, they add a solidity to it that I don't want. I want it to look like a liquid armor. And this is a great way to actually do that. I can now add an area of gray, a true area of gray to the piece, and still keep it as a liquid armor. I could do that with ink washes, but with the uneven textures, it really created a few problems here. But with this ink, I have a consistent gray that I can consistently apply to my artwork to continue that theme of a liquid armor. And to me, I think that's a great use for this ink. Just viewing it as another way to add gray to your piece, or even add a true gray to your piece. Combine that with the different methods you have at your disposal for artificial grays, and you can add a variety of gray textures and tones to your art that you normally wouldn't be able to do without a gray ink. In my opinion, on my scale of 1 to 10, this ink actually deserves a scale of 6. I think it's really good, and just is something that I would definitely keep in mind when inking, especially if you're going to be a professional inker. It can really add just that little pop to your art, and on top of that, you know, it doesn't hurt to pick up. I don't think this is a must-have that you should go out and get right now, but when you start taking inking more seriously and start your professional art career, something that I would definitely have on hand to add that little extra bit of pizzazz to your art. But that's my opinion, and I'd love to hear you guys in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the actual gray ink itself? Have you used it before, or do you even know of other gray inks out there? Because I would love to give them a test. And also let me know what you guys think of the piece itself. It's probably one of my favorite pieces of the year, easily top 5 material. I absolutely love it. So all that normal YouTube jazz said and done, I'm J.A.M.B.E.R at BATTLEBrawlerproductions. I draw power in my own soul.